A warm welcome. You're tuned in to Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson, BI, with the top stories for you on the continent. Kenya's president calls for an investigation after a fire sweeps through one of East Africa's biggest open-air markets. The blaze calls at thousands of dollars worth of damage. Authorities say that blaze could have been the result of arson. Tete province in Mozambique is expected to become the region's energy powerhouse built on coal and hydroelectricity, but farming communities say they're losing out to the coal boom. And the French music group Kids United are in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, where they'll be working as UNICEF ambassadors and performing on the African continent for the very first time. Our correspondent on the ground sent us an exclusive report. But first to our top story. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta has called for an inquiry after a fire tore through one of East Africa's biggest open-air markets on Friday. Well, the blaze began at Kikomba Market in Nairobi early this morning and burned for hours before firefighters could extinguish it. The highly popular market specialises in second-hand clothes from Europe, and the cost of the damage is expected to be in the thousands of dollars. Well, it's not the first time the market has caught alight, but officials say today's blaze is the worst to date. They fear it could be the result of arson. Our correspondent Julia Steers reports from Nairobi.
Thousands of vendors and residents have been out here working all day to sift through the wreckage after a fire burned through Nairobi's largest marketplace. The fire started early this morning around 3 a.m. and vendors here tell us it was difficult to contain due to the high winds and to the high heat here in Nairobi. Now, as I said, it's Nairobi's largest marketplace. It's one of East Africa's largest marketplace, and it's home to tens of thousands of vendors who will now have to rebuild their livelihoods. Things here have already turned political in terms of the response to it. The opposition presidential candidate's team has said that the government did not do enough to respond to the fire in a timely manner. Now, the representatives for the government tell us that they believe there are signs that it was arson and that they're investigating it. They said they're also looking into future solutions to prevent this destruction from happening again, and that includes building back up the marketplace with more permanent structures.
Still in Nairobi, police fired tear gas at opposition supporters today as they took to the streets calling for election board officials to be sacked. Last month, Kenya's Supreme Court annulled a presidential vote held in August, citing irregularities. Opposition leader Raila Odinga says his supporters are angry about the role the election board played in that cancelled poll. President Uhuru Kenyatta won the vote by 1.4 million votes before it was annulled. He's accused the Supreme Court of bringing the country close to judicial chaos. Well, here's one of the opposition supporters speaking earlier. Have a listen.
Coming to fight against NASA supporters. That is not right. And we are telling Bwana Uhuru, wherever he is, he should know that we are all Kenyans. And the votes he is requesting from Kenyans will never get a vote from NASA supporter. Big is Kenya, and Kenya is bigger than him. Kenya is bigger than Uhuru.
Next to eastern DR Congo, where 3 suspected tribal militiamen have been killed and 2 UN soldiers injured after armed men attacked a UN peacekeeping base this Friday morning. Well, the militiamen were killed during an exchange of fire with UN troops, this after launching their assault near Lubero, north of Goma. Well, since the beginning of 2017, Mai militias have regularly attacked Congolese army positions in north and neighbouring South Kivu. A fierce critic of Rwanda's president has appeared in court alongside her mother and sister, charged with forgery and inciting insurrection. Diane Swima-Rigera is accused of faking registration papers to stand against President Paul Kagame in elections which were held in August. Well, the 35-year-old Rigara was eventually barred from running, and Kagame went on to win 98.8% of the vote. On Friday, Rigara told a packed courtroom that she'd been forced to appear without her lawyer because authorities hadn't informed him of the time of the hearing. An estimated 23 billion tonnes of mostly untapped coal lie beneath Tete province in Mozambique. Now, Tete is expected to become the region's energy powerhouse built on coal and hydroelectricity. However, local farming communities say they're losing out to the coal boom. France 24's Laurent Berstiquet brings us this report.
In 2009 and 2010, over 1,300 families were resettled away from Mozambique's Tete province to make way for a large-scale coal mining operation. Many were relocated to Kateme, a newly constructed village, but they've since struggled to make ends meet.
The standard of living here is poor and there is no work. Several families have left their homes to try their luck in the city.
Mozambique's Tete province sits on a largely untapped 23 billion tons of coal and has been primed to become the country's new energy and economic powerhouse. But so far, local populations have been on the losing side of the boom. Over the past decade, entire farming communities have been uprooted to make way for mining concessions and licenses granted to foreign companies. But lack of farmable land, access to water, and distance from other towns and markets have made it almost impossible for them to survive in their new homes.
People who were relocated here now have to dismantle their houses and sell the zinc from their doors and ceilings in order to feed their children.
In 2014, the government pledged to reinvest a percentage of mining revenue into the development of local communities. And while authorities recently said the country's mining sector had grown by over 50%, Kateme residents are still waiting for their share.
Now, they're aged between 10 and 17 years old and say they sing to create a better world. The French music group Kids United are in Abidjan, Ivory Coast this Friday. They're there to fulfil their role as UNICEF ambassadors and perform on the African continent for the very first time. Our correspondents were there to meet them.
A sea of smartphones ready to capture the moment with their favourite artists. Scores of Kids United lovers have turned up for the autograph session at a popular media store in Abidjan. They've come to meet the idols whose songs they know by heart. The teenage sensations are performing in Africa for the first time on Saturday. Since touching down on the continent, they haven't stopped signing CDs, posters and T-shirts. The young musicians are overwhelmed by the welcome they've received.
For a moment, I thought we were going to be all alone, but this is crazy. It's great because we can meet our fans and it's incredible. We're here thanks to them and we can't thank them enough.
They spent the morning in the town of Port Boué on the outskirts of the city, visiting children affected by HIV. This is part of their role as UNICEF ambassadors.
Kids United are very well known. They are UNICEF messengers, but they are children first of all. So they are very close to them. They can chat with them and burst into song at any time.
The young stars also paid a visit to a training centre where women who've dropped out of school are being taught a trade, a window into the sometimes challenging daily life of some women on the continent.
Personally, it affects me very much the way these women and children are getting their education. I'm really pleased to see that there are still people who are committed to helping them become beautiful people.
A cappella, the latest song by Kids United, Mama Africa, a song to get their fans dancing on Saturday at two planned concerts in Abidjan.
As you've just been hearing there, Mama Africa features the Grammy Award-winning Angelique Kidjo and Senegal's Youssou N'Dour. We'll leave you with Mama Africa.